Hello, I'm Dale Matthews, and you're not. But here's Mike Jones.
Yes, and you're not Mike Jones either.
None of us.
Are we going rafting here today, or what's going on?
Yeah, I'd anticipated that what was going to happen in the 19th of today's meetings was that the U.S. Forest Service guy was going to come in and talk about not only closing roads, but this is just a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
This is this is one of those
that would
Forest
be
Service.
interesting. You're paddling, come around a corner, and all of a sudden, holy moly!
There's a Forest
Hopefully,
Service gate on the river.
hopefully, I can limbo under that thing.
There are some people who are headed in this direction,
Yeah.
but it was it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. This guy seems like a good guy. Okay, certainly we're going to get some kind of feed. You don't understand. They're just not. Okay, yeah, we know they're awful. But this guy seems like he's an all right guy. And even though he was talking about 2477, now listen, if you don't know what 2477 roads are, don't worry. It doesn't affect you. If you do know what 2477 roads are, we'll tell you. But then you're going to be concerned. Otherwise, well, not go back to sleep, but don't worry about it. Don't lose any sleep over it. But we're going to start slightly elsewhere. So today was an interesting day for meetings, and it started off with the usual weekly business session, which was more interesting than it usually is. Mike was there too. What do you think was, for you, Mike, was the headline of the day from the weekly business session with the Board of County Commissioners without Cheryl Walker?
Um. Well, and there was some talk about the situation with county fire, and it was interesting to hear Keith talk about it. Then you'd swear that well, there was an issue with them not being a member of the Chiefs Association, but just yesterday they became a member of the Chiefs Association, so everything's fine now. So I don't know what your problem is.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
kind of funny.
He's been doing this thing recently, which is, I just don't understand why everybody's all so worked up. There's no reason to be worked up about anything, and certainly not about commissioners, because the commissioners are basically blameless, as you know. Well, go ahead.
I think if people are worked up about something that the commissioners are doing, it probably is because that they find more often than not that the commissioners are doing something that is not friendly to their interests. And so they're, after a while, you begin to get frustrated and go, "You're doing it again."
Yes.
And then they point the finger at you and go, "Ha, you're irrational." Well,
Right.
you know,
He's always saying, would you please just go back to sleep, kind of thing. Okay.
yes.
So it started off with the idea that there was going to be two proclamations. Now, keep in mind, Simon Harris said proclamations don't mean anything. Well, there's a symbolic reference there. I mean, to have a proclamation that that Josephine County believes that the federal government should live up to their contract with us, I find that symbolic, but at least it shows that they're on our side, whatever that means. Okay. So I don't have a thing against proclamations. I will say I'm getting kind of bored with what I call County Cat Week over and over and over again. Really?
Yeah.
And so there were two proclamations today. And the only reason this is slightly interesting is because one of them is controversial and the other not at all. It's Zonta, it's a women's group, Zonta off into the blue, or I don't know, some kind of thing where they're saying how wonderful they are for a week. Okay, that's nice. And Cheryl is one of the top people there, and Rosemary Paget is the new.
Yeah.
Oh, no, is the new president of Zonta. Ay. So, they want now. There were two commissioners that signed that. This is important. But the reason they didn't, although they had advertised the fact that they were going to do the second proclamation, they didn't do it, was because there were only two commissioners that had signed it. Now, wait a minute. There were two
Yeah,
commissioners that
that's a
signed the first one,
majority.
and two
Yes.
commissioners that signed the second one, but the second
Yeah.
one couldn't be read because there was only two of them.
Hmm.
Really? Now, we've
Yeah, that
seen them
doesn't.
pass ordinances with just
They
two
passed stuff
commissioners.
today with a vote of two people. What's the deal?
Okay, so the deal is this. One of them was about the celebration of GMO Awareness Month. That's what it's called. Now, you would think, well, we're just going to be aware of GMO. Not quite. Okay, it says something like, whereas a healthy and sustainable food system, yeah, everything's sustainable these days. Local sustainability, that's the most important thing. And GMO-free organizations, oh, there's the word free, around the world have helped individuals and families, et cetera, et cetera. I like the idea of labeling. And quite a while back, a non-GMO project of the U.S. and Canada, and then promote, making sure that we know about GMOs in our food supply. And there's restaurants and organizations throughout Josephine County that are going to be participating in, here it comes again, GMO-free awareness activities. And so, therefore,
Dale, I thought we were GMO free here.
well, now
That's
now I will tell you that if the city of Grants Pass gets a chance to tax all GMO things, we won't be GMO free anymore. Thank you very much. I'll be here all week.
yes,
Right,
yes.
but the point is that Simon didn't like this. Simon did not like this. And he
Hmm.
did, and we know that Cheryl is in favor of this, and as is Keith. But the most important thing to me is whether you like this or you think it's stupid. We took a vote,
Hmm.
and Simon's point of view lost. And it's not the first time that one or all of the county commissioners have lost out to a vote of the people. And believe
Yeah.
me, it's not going to be the last time either, you guys. So Simon did not want it to be GMO Awareness Month until next week when Cheryl comes back. To me, the worst part about this is once I heard that at yesterday's meeting, I called the GMO folks. Now, I met a couple of them because we did that story about them. And I think that you'll agree that we tried to be pretty fair about it. And we did try to talk with the people who are pro GMO or don't want the, or don't like the fact that the vote passed. And so
Yeah,
they,
those are the ones who are suing Josephine County because they wanted to grow GMO sugar beets or something.
yes, that's exactly right. Now, they waited until after the 1 year phase out period was over.
Hmm.
This vote took place over a year ago, and they waited till that was over, and then they filed the lawsuit on,
Hmm.
I think, the day before it went into action. And so here's the thing that bothered me personally. No matter what your point of view was in this, the GMO awareness people, they were not told that this was going to be canceled. They found out from me.
Nice.
So they didn't come. They could have and said something anyway. So I said to him, well, first of all, I don't like the fact that nobody called him. Maybe they did eventually, but I waited till after the meeting. It was about an hour after that. I finished fiddling around with the video stuff here and setting things, and I called them, and they hadn't been told. Okay, that's not fair. That's not right. It's just not right. To cancel at the last minute's bad enough, and then not to tell them, that's really bad. Okay, in my personal opinion. So I said to the lady, I said, look, we do the news, but we also do commentary. So here's my commentary to you. You seem to have three choices. One is you can cry yourselves to sleep. That's the kind of show we have. Number two is you can go tomorrow and give them holy hell. Tell them where to go and how come they didn't tell you and what's the matter with them and don't they pay attention to the vote, and with concentration on Simon. I said, and the third one, and probably the one you're actually going to want to do, is you want to have the county, the reason you're doing this is you want to have the county look like it's fully on board with you. So what you could do is just shut up, wait till next week, you'll get your vote, and you'll look like everything is rosy. Guess which one they chose? Rosie. They chose the rosy
Okay.
one. They said, "Well, do you have to get up and talk about this?" I said, "No, no, absolutely not. No, I don't have to talk about anything. I mean, on the show, yes, but at the weekly business session, that's not necessary. Don't have to. There's plenty of things to talk about." Like,
I'm a little surprised that there isn't a little bit more of an uproar. So when do they plan on addressing this in public, or do they?
next week.
Uh,
Well, they'll sign the proclamation. Proclamation, it's just a proclamation, okay? It's symbolic, but Simon didn't like the symbology of it.
did you get a hold of some Mexican Coca-Cola there, Dale?
I did, as a matter of fact. Eso in Mexico.
I
Yes.
saw that. I go, there's only one reason why he's drinking Coca-Cola is because he has some contraband.
Oh, that's not why. Okay, it's not. Oh, it is Mexican Coke, but not that kind. Now stop it. Okay, so this is. It used to be that if you got, it's not anymore. I just found out. If you buy Coca-Cola from Mexico, since you brought up this interesting news item, used to be that it would be made with cane sugar. They don't make Pepsi or Coke in America with cane sugar anymore. So yeah, they're still doing the Caribbean, but not. But they did in Mexico. So I thought, well, it's expensive, but I'll get one bottle and see if it's changed. It has. This is made with sugar beets.
That's stinky.
GMO sugar beets? We don't know.
GMO, yes, that's right.
So the GMO tastes funny, Mike. I don't like it. Sign a proclamation. So anyway,
a third ear popping out of the side of your head.
I'm telling you that it makes a difference. It's just colored sugar water. Come on. But it does make a difference if it's made with cane sugar or not. There's a different flavor to it. And
Sure.
I said on this show that there are people who couldn't tell the difference between milk and industrial strength Drano, but I can tell the difference if it's got one kind of sugar or another. And those of you who use Splenda or pink stuff or whatever, you probably do know the difference between one kind of sugar and one kind of a sugar substitute. And doesn't everybody know the difference between margarine and butter?
For sure. I would hope.
There's probably people who don't. Is it lard or is it butter? Well, you can't tell.
Well, listen, I was victim to the the food pyramid guys there back in the 70s and 80s who told us you need to go margarine and get rid of butter, it'll kill you. Turns out butter is a lot more healthy for you than margarine is, and as a matter of fact, margarine is the cause of a lot of the issues that people have been having. So.
Like sterility and gayness, yeah.
Yes. Right. So, don't, can your margarine, go back to butter. It tastes so much better too.
Well, I like it. But anyway, that's okay. So, so that was the proclamation controversy. Really? Really? It's County Cat Week again. That's so controversial. No, it's not. Well, just a little bit. Okay. So, so Mike's right. There were some people who got up, all the controversy at these things. Keith is always trying to say, now simmer down. Oh, everything is fine. Why, things are looking better than ever. Why, this is the best county commission ever, ever. And so they're always patting each other on the back. Well, a couple of people got up and they said something about county fire out in Merlin and how come, things weren't working out for them. And Keith says, well, they're part of the group now. Yeah, but we were told, and we've told you, that the reason they were immediately accepted, according to County Fire, is because of us. Mike and I, as improbable as that is, it's because of a story that we did, and people looked at it and go, that's terrible.
Okay, well, here, let's examine the evidence of that.
Oh, please do. Okay, first, it wasn't in the Courier. It wasn't on KJO. It would never be on KJO. It wasn't on Bill Meyer's show until I went on there. It wasn't on any of the TV stations. No, where else are you going to find it? That newspaper out in Cave Junction? I don't think so.
Well, not only that, they had been waiting for a very long time to become a member of the Chiefs Association. They're jumping through hoops and all this kind of stuff. And then they were told by the Chiefs Association back in June, I think it was, that I'm sorry, you know what, we're going to have to rework our bylaws because we don't have a method for, incorporating new members here or voting on them or whatever it was. It was some BS story about why they couldn't be.
Well, apparently it was, since they just did it.
Yeah, and then what do you know? That situation still exists all the way up until the point when they're on our show, and then the next morning at about 6 a.m. they got a phone
6
call or
a.m.
an email saying, "Hey,
Oh, you've always been
you're
here. Remember, we're so happy.
welcome to the club."
We never met that.
Yes. So that's why that happened. And this is an interesting thing because I had a conversation with Simon Hare outside the Ann Basker after the thing today, and I said, Simon, isn't it a little bit troubling that you have a potential this franchise agreement or ordinance or whatever the heck you want to call it that gives the keys to the gate to one organization, and that allows one party to control whether or not the other party gets to come to the party. And he first kind of got all flustery, and then he said, "Well, yeah, you can't do that." I'm not sure what he got out of that conversation. I was trying to relate that I don't think that it's right that the county commissioners hand the keys to the executive washroom to one company and allow them to exclude at will some other company from doing business here in the county. That's not right.
Gerald
And
just
you're-
admitted last Thursday that when the new version of the all important revision to the requirements, when that came out, that had only been shared with one company. Well, there's only two companies, and it wasn't two private companies, and it sure wasn't the Merlin fire guy. So it doesn't take any brains to figure out who they did send it to, and only that company. What?
yeah, it's pretty weird stuff.
So here's where we are. Like it or not, I hope that you do like it, but even if you don't, this is the way that it is. We're the ones that are going to these meetings and constantly saying, now, what about this? What about this fairness? What about this point where you're breaking the law? What about this thing where you're making these decisions and not telling anybody? How can you possibly do these things? Then we've got our show. We do the show with the guys from county, and immediately they get their first problem resolved. That's just the first of the problems. This thing about sharing it with only one company, that's an indication these problems have not stopped. So you got that. And then we're going up to the commissioners after the meeting. It's going to teach Simon to leave out the back door. And Mike is going, well, what about this? We're not just
I
news
was
guys.
not shaking him. Listen. They lectured us in class. This is pre-birth class where you learn how to do the what is it the
breathing?
Yeah, the breathing and all the techniques to birth the baby, and they said, don't shake your baby like this.
Oh yeah,
so I would never do that.
Yeah. Simon Hare, the baby. But we do ask
I wasn't
them,
inferring that, but
but we do ask them. We've talked to them, especially out on the sidewalk. Well, this thing about, are we media or are we not media? Well, it sure seems the heck that we are media. I mean, one of yesterday's videos that we put up has gotten well over 300 views in one day. Okay, so somebody's watching, and it must have been some influential guys on this story because they took immediate action and they didn't like the negative publicity. So what we're trying to do is what you've asked us to do, which is hold them accountable. Now, here's what Keith Heck is trying to do to stay out of the accountability crosshairs, not just ours, but everybody else. So some other folks had come up last week or the week before, and they said, what the heck are you guys doing about this Food and Friends thing? That just isn't right. What you're doing to Food and Friends with RV Cog is just not right. Oh, no, that's not us. No, that wouldn't be us. No, we have nothing to do with that. Why? That's the 4-H guys.
Food and Friends, RV Cog, question marks above my head.
Oh, okay. All right.
No
Food and Friends is a program similar to Meals on Wheels for seniors. Okay. And RV Cog is the Rogue Valley Council of Governments. And the number one reason Simon has said several times why we continue to pay a lot of money to RV Cog to be a member, that kind of stuff has got to stop, buddy. We'll talk about that on another show. To be a member is because they run Food and Friends. Number one reason. Number two reason. Number three reason. They run Food and Friends. So now, after they had promised these Food and Friends guys that they would find them a permanent place and supposedly temporary for the last several years in the 4-H building, there is a 4-H. It's not called a taxing area, but it's a district, 4-H district. Okay, and they said,
which I find really bizarre. By the way, I'm sure I'm angering a bunch of future Farmers of America people and 4-H members countywide, but I don't understand why we're supporting your organization with our tax dollars.
Well, we're picking one lifestyle over another. You see, because we don't support. We don't support some kinds of lifestyles, but we really support others. Well, it's too bad the family farm is going out of business. We're going to support them. We're going to make a place for their kids, and we're going to keep supporting a lifestyle which is slowly eroding with our tax dollars.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm all for the market there. And if there's a market, if there's enough of a market for hogs raised by adolescent kids, then the money will flow and that will continue, regardless of what my feelings are about it.
We have to prop it up. And if you want something similar to that, why don't we prop up other things that couldn't exist without government help, like solar power and wind mill kind of things? Well, you don't understand. That's the future. Hey, I do understand.
Listen.
That may be the future. However, we have to pour county, state, and federal dollars into it because it won't pay for itself.
Yeah, and here, let me ask a question. I know this is crazy to be asking this kind of a question, but
me, yes.
Has there been a time in the past where the government came up with the answer of what was going to be the future? And I don't think so. I mean, they said, well, we invented the internet. Well, you didn't make it what it is now. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
If it was up to you, it'd still be something that, people in the military typed messages back and forth to each other on.
And where's my flying car?
Yes. No, the thing is that I believe that if you're going to get the next thing in, alternative energy, it's going to come from the free market, because, when the guy finds the thing that you take out and plug into the ground, and all of a sudden there's enough power there to run your house, he's going to sell it.
Nikola Tesla could do that.
Yeah, I've heard the stories of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But look now at who's got a private space company. It's private, and they're launching rockets.
Right.
And every once in a while something goes wrong, but it did with the U.S. government too. They're doing it on their own. It's private enterprise space project.
Yeah,
wow.
You're talking about Virgin Galactic there.
Yeah.
Listen, there's a guy, he was on 60 Minutes probably 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Bloom Energy. And he has basically, it's a fuel cell, and there's a number of different fuels that you can run through this thing, and it converts that into electricity. I really don't understand how fuel cells work, but essentially, and there are a number of companies down there that are using it right now. eBay, Yahoo, Google. They have these little blocks plugged in right outside their building there, and it's producing energy for them. And to a certain degree, they're off the grid with that.
Now, one thing that we do know is that the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, that's in Washington, D.C., has done a lot of work about better batteries. And honestly, without the space program and without NIST, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the stuff that makes phone calls and tiny batteries and all that. They do all kinds of work, and they turn over the technology to private enterprise.
Okay.
Well, there's pluses.
Yeah. You know what? Okay. You know what? I'm sure there's a few good things that come from testing stuff in space, but generally speaking, the private free market is where everything that is good for humanity emanates. And Solyndra, that was really bad. All we're doing is killing a bunch of endangered birds with these huge windmills, and and then we have solar facilities out in the middle of Death Valley that are frying every bird that flies through the darn things. Let's let the free market work, and it'll come up with something. Listen, there's been an evolution throughout time.
Oh, now you believe in evolution too. Great.
Yes. Well, I do, but listen, I'm of a mind that evolution and God, those two things can exist.
Oh,
together.
absolutely.
Listen, who wrote the software, for crying out loud?
Yes, I agree. That's good.
So I think that's the future. We're not using petroleum in the same way we were 50 years ago.
Yes.
40 years ago, I lived in Napa County. This is not LA. This is Napa County. And we had smog. We lived about 2,000 feet over the valley. And, so we could see into the valley every morning, every afternoon. You could see smog out there. It was filling up. And some genius invents catalytic converters. And the initial foray into smog equipment, which was horrible, but ultimately ended up cleaning up the air. Now I haven't seen smog
led
in years.
the way. California led the way, and there would be no way that would be happening in America today if California hadn't said, you know what, we're not going to allow anything but this. And the government, well, no, don't do that. Well, you better get it together. And so every once in a while, there's something where the government steps in. The government just of one state said, we want this, and brother.
Well, and you know what? I have no choice but to throw a bone to the government on that particular issue.
Just of the state of California. Oh, yes. There's left-leaning, left coast people. Look what.
Listen, whoa. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
California was not at all left-leaning in the 70s.
Well, Orange County maybe not, but San Francisco was.
No, it wasn't. Listen,
San Francisco wasn't left-leaning in the 70s.
San Francisco.
I just said that.
But San Francisco is a little teeny group. Most of the rest of the state was pretty conservative, for crying out loud. As a matter of fact, most of the rest of the state still is very conservative. If you look at the red-blue election maps, you have these little cores in L.A., Sacramento, and San Francisco. The rest is all red. It is.
Somehow the rest of the country is missing the boat on this story.
Well, no, they're outnumbered by the people in the rest of the state. They're outnumbered because you have larger concentrations of people in those areas where they're all indoctrinated into chewing the Democrat line or whatever. But most of the rest of the state, if you look at the outcomes of elections county by county, it's pretty much mostly red. In fact, the entire country is like that. You have, if it weren't for Portland, this would be a Republican state.
Okay.
It would.
Now, Mike is talking about the entire state of California and Oregon being mostly red. There are other people who say that they're all reds also.
No. Now, here, let's not confuse.
Okay.
The way the direction went with the thinking. You have a concentration in one particular area, but if you go outside of that area, you're going to have a totally different conversation with almost everybody you meet.
That's true.
Just because you get a bunch of lemmings in one particular place, doesn't reflect what the entire state thinks.
Did you say a bunch of Lenins?
Lemmings.
Like Vladimir Lenin? Bunch of Lenins?
Yeah, well, that too. But no, listen, I'll give it to them for whatever whatever legislation they passed to make sure that people were putting stuff that dealt with smog on their cars. That was a very good thing because it cleaned up the air everywhere. You don't see smog anymore. Generally speaking,
I talked with someone the other day that I've known for a long time. I've been here for me, it's a long time. I know nothing for people who are living here. And I've lived here for about 15 years. This guy thinks I'm a leftist, and he is a leftist. He's not right. And I've got people who think that I'm right-wing radical. I'm not, okay? I'm somewhere in between. But this guy said, I've been watching your show and I like that Mike Jones. And I said, well, I do too. Yeah, but he's the first conservative that I've ever heard that seemed to make sense. So, Mike, you're actually reaching out to people who don't listen to conservatives. They don't like them. They don't believe them, but somehow you've convinced them to believe you.
When I was a kid, I remember well, yes, and that's uh, I'm getting into your head and corrupting your morals is what's happening.
No, I agree with you about a lot of things, not everything, but this wouldn't be an interesting show if we agreed about everything. Come on.
When I was a kid, I remember in school, because they always had the calendar that they'd put on the wall, and it had the president, and then they had, the governors of all the states. And of course, because we were, we were California, you had, the president, and then you had a smaller picture that was the governor of the state. And then you had all the other presidents all the way to, George Washington or whatever. Well, I remember that, there was, when I was a kid in school, there were two governors of California that I remember. One was Jerry Brown, who just happens to be the governor now again.
Yeah, isn't that
and then there was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I can't remember the sequence, but I pretty much think that
Jerry Brown was first and last, and Ronald Reagan was in between, like a big Oreo cookie.
Okay. Yes. But in any event, when Ronald Reagan was the governor there, there was a lot of Republican governors that won California during the time when I was old enough to remember. But a Republican governor doesn't have a chance down there now, and they have a super majority in their legislature. So it's
a pendulum.
Yeah, I don't know. What happens, here's the problem, and this is the problem for Oregon. And I hear a lot of Oregonians complain a lot about this, and to some degree, they're probably right. In California, you had a lot of conservative people who said, I am out of here. And, when they leave, of course, you're not going to turn California when you've just increased the ratio by leaving, and so, a lot of these people have come up to Oregon. And I remember when I first arrived here, I was picking up a washer and dryer at the appliance store on 6th Street. And I was driving a U-Haul truck that had a California plate on it. And people were driving by, flipping me off and saying, go home. And I said, I am home. Thanks.
Nice.
But I understand the sentiment there. Is that, don't bring your California ways up here, because there's a lot of people. Listen, I have a couple of neighbors that are like that. They would like to turn Oregon into California 2.0.
There used to be billboards coming over the border that said, don't Californicate here.
Yes. Welcome to Oregon. Now, please go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, it's changing, and it's going to keep changing here. Things are going to keep changing. And one of the things that we do on this show is to try to talk a little bit about the things that we have in common. For example, I'm going to skip over executive session. We'll go back to that. At the 3 o'clock meeting that I went there, as I said, with this thing over my shoulder. I anticipated that the U.S. Forest Service guy that was there, he's the new forest supervisor, that he'd be talking tough like they do with the BLM about closing up roads. Now, you're going to have a little bit more time, about 30 more days, to protest if you think that your favorite road out there for mining or for hunting or for off-road vehicles or for taking pictures of botanically rich environment, all of those things, don't laugh, if all of those, that's very important to them, and mushroom hunters and things like that, okay, that those roads are now closed off or will be closed off. So you have the ability to protest directly to the Forest Service saying, please don't do that. Now, the commissioners They don't know beans about this, really. Simon is the only one with information, and Keithek, you can just see he's astounded that Simon knows bean number one about this, much less he's full of beans, okay? Keith just
Mm-hmm.
admits straight out he doesn't know anything. So Simon was the main person talking with him, and Cheryl wasn't there. She's on vacation or something. That's a real good idea. So, but this guy was saying, listen, I think we've come up with some solutions. Really? Solutions. Okay. So he says, for example, we sat down with the people. It's hard to generalize, but Mike doesn't mind. With environmentalists on one side and off-road vehicle guys on the other side. You wouldn't think that they'd have a lot in common. And he's come up with these solutions. He said, well, for example, some off-road vehicle people, they want to go out and hunt. Okay. And it's very difficult. I don't do that, but they want to go out and hunt something. And then they want to be able to bring it back to the rest of civilization. But it's very difficult to hike out with that, to cut something into 4 parts. It's hard to cut a sparrow into 4 parts. Cut that into 4 parts and then backpack it out of there, right? And so they really need some kind of vehicle. So what they've decided to do, and talking with both sides, is that we're going to split this thing in 2, and we're going to allow hunting only during hunting season. Yeah. And then you can take your off-road vehicles. And then for the rest of the year, no off-road vehicles. And both sides said, okay with me. Oh. And they had that kind of solution for a number of things. Like there was this mountain ridge between 2 disparate deals, and one had more rare botanical species than the other. And they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to set one side of the mountain range, no off-road vehicles at all. No Jeeps traveling out there, nothing motorized at all on that side, and everything motorized on this side. Oh, well, both sides said yes. Now, they easily could argue, well, what about the speckled warble? They could have, but they didn't. They said, okay, so this is going to be, now they're going to keep fighting. Of course they are. Well, we want the other side of the mountain. But for now, they've got their side. The other guys have got theirs. They don't even need to hear each other. They don't need to hear one side, or whatever you do to call these birds, and the other side, they don't need to hear them. Cool. So the Forest Service is coming up with these solutions to please both sides. We said it was possible. It has to be possible, you guys. It has to be possible. It's just not going to work to say death to the other side, nothing but death to the other side. Mike?
Yes. Yeah.
Too rosy an outlook for you?
Yeah, I don't think you are going to be able to, because I don't know. It depends on the premise. If you're okay with the premise that the federal government, just they own 80% of Josephine County, and that's that, and you can only go on the roads that they say that you can go on, and they let you go on a couple, and then you're happy with that. I say, I guess that's as good as it gets.
I'm not okay with that, but at the moment, the federal government, the ones with the big battleships and tanks and stuff, has said that the Forest Service is managing that area for the rest of us. And as long as they're managing it, they have decided, out of the goodness of their heart, to sit down and get both sides at the same table. Well, when was the last time you heard both sides of the same table on these issues with anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did it. Okay, this is not going to last forever, but it's a start. And it's the government doing it, really.
Yeah, I personally, you know how I am.
I do.
I'm one of these people. I don't want them here.
Yes.
I think that ultimately,
U.S. out of the U.S.
Well, no. Listen, it isn't that. Go west to the Mississippi. Oh, I'm sorry, east of the Mississippi. They don't own 80% of every state over there. They used to, by the way. But those states said, no, get out.
Who stepped in and made the big decision? It was TR. It was Teddy Roosevelt, the guy that was walking softly and carrying a big stick, the guy that declared, basically, he and Randolph Hearst declared war on Spain. I mean, this is the big kahuna when it comes to this. And he was the one that said, not only do we need to be belligerent in our attitude about war, I mean, talking about belligerent, that was TR, but also we need to be belligerent in the attitude that we're going to take care of some of these areas that are disappearing, according to TR.
Yeah, but that's not, that's, listen, it's, we don't have enough time to go into the entire thing, but there's a lot more to it. As a matter of fact, this
Yes,
ownership
always is.
of most of the Western states by the federal government dates all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So that
Well,
predates,
I don't think the Western states, but okay.
oh, no, it does. It's that, most of the Western states that existed at that time, the federal government basically owned them, and
But a Western state back in those days was Missouri.
well, right. I mean, Oregon basically, didn't exist in California. I think, I'm not sure when the date that it was.
California was split
Well,
between Mexico and Russia.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
really,
didn't even become a state until, the early 1800s or something. But
until bears were invented, bears and
yes,
stars.
bears. But
Yes.
The point is that a lot of the ownership of these Western states had nothing to do with preservation of wild and scenic
It was
rivers or
gold.
whatever.
Gold. Let's
Well,
not
no,
forget what
it's
started this. Oh, absolutely, it was gold.
okay. There was gold in some of these states, but the thing is that a lot of these states didn't feel like they had the infrastructure or whatever to take care of the borders or whatever it
Oh no,
was
they were
having to
proud
do
to
with these
become a state.
states.
Proud to become a state. It's on our flag.
Yes,
The
and then
day we became the year we became a state. State of Oregon. State of
yes,
Oregon. Wow, that's so
yes,
cool. Written in
right,
gold
yes,
letters.
and then they
Gold
didn't
letters.
take. And then they didn't say, "Hey, thanks a lot for looking out for us. Now you can leave now."
No, they didn't do
That
that.
never happened, and unfortunately, because now I think that if they sold off a lot of the land that's in there that is not pristine for rare botanical species, and they could probably pay off the national debt with a lot of that real estate. 80% of the state of Nevada, 80% is owned by the federal government. For crying out loud, really? Is that really necessary? Have you driven through Nevada? There's nothing there.
Well, yeah, that's
You know?
what it looks like, except for the areas where they won't let you travel.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, they got to have their little Area 50. Well, I'm fine. I'm not saying kick them out. I'm saying, you know what? For crying out loud, is it really? They own a tremendous amount of the state of California.
Yes, they do.
They really do. And why is that really necessary?
That's
I
a
mean,
real good question.
yeah, it's silly. Anyway,
Okay, so the second meeting that took place
where
today,
were we?
we were talking about meetings that took place today. The second meeting that took place today, which we don't get a chance to see, was the executive session. Here are some of the things that were talked about in executive session today. Wally Hicks, the county legal counsel, sent a confidential memo, and they talked about it, about rogue advocates and the Corcorans that are suing Josephine County over this thing about the Luba Appeal, Land Use Board of Appeals, and Andreas Bleck, and the gravel mine. They call it sand and gravel. It's probably gold and gravel, to be honest. And the whole thing in Sunny Valley. And so he's going to have insider information to share with the commissioners about what to do. They also had a meeting about, see if this sounds topical, AMR. That's the guys that American Medical Response, I think so, that want to merge with the only other private fire
rural metro
other than the guys out in county fire. And so it's a confidential memo about their consent to merger. They need permission from the county for the consent to merger. I just think that's a little odd, but okay, whatever the rules are. So they also had a meeting about that today. That's kind of interesting to me. Tomorrow, they're going to, we talked about this last night, they're going to have a meeting with the one part of their meeting. Thursday meetings are very important. 7 new hires that JJ Schofield, the HR director, 7 new hires
Mm.
that we can now afford because our budget is magical, you see.
Mm-hmm.
That hey, this guy's on a hiring binge and they're behind him 100%. Can't wait to get more people hired into county government. Let's have full employment for the county government.
Right on.
We'll
Right
tell you
on.
what we hear
Boy,
at that meeting, you know.
that's the kind of forward thinking we need in this county.
Yeah, full employment for county
For
workers.
county workers. Well, you know what? It's funny. They may well perceive the economy as being their own economy
Mm,
within county government, you know,
mhm.
and when things are good, I mean, really need to strive to have a good economy. You know, it really does help the economy when the county, and when they say, every time they say the county, they mean us. Uh, not us as citizens of the county, but us. I'm one of them too. See, uh, you know, that's the only thing they're concerned about. They're only concerned about their own little world.
When we were talking about elected officials' compensation, we've talked about this on the show before. J.J. Schofield jumped in with both feet, and he just couldn't try to shut me up fast enough, questioning the idea that our typical employees, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, come on, but that they make, it seems like, twice as much as the average worker in our county.
Mm.
Really? And now, why would that be the case? That these guys would make so many times more what the average worker? Shouldn't we be basing all of their pay on what the people around them? Because if they're public servants, how come they're making twice, 3 times, 4 times what the people in the county are making?
Mm.
And the main reason behind this is, to them, it's a region. It's the whole western part of America, probably, but at least in Oregon. And how in the world are they going to get training here and get some things done here and then move to another location if they say, well, it says here you weren't making very much money? Well, that's because of where I was living. Yeah, right. Uh-huh. So they need to make top dollar. You've heard them say, we played
Mm.
back a tape. Well, they're going to need to be paid as much as they're paid in Portland, or we won't be able to attract good people.
Yeah, and listen, they tax different in Portland. They, their the cost of living is much higher in Portland. And by the way, here's the 2012 county by county map. And
Wow, how did you do that? That's amazing.
yes, I drew that while you were talking. Uh, no, and as you can see, the upper part of the state, upper part of the state of Oregon. I mean, if you subtract that, the whole lower part of the state and the eastern part of the state's all red. That's how they vote. But the bottom line is that in their city up there, cost of living is way higher. That's not comparable to here at all. Here you, up until very recently, the prices are really going up here. But you could rent a 3-bedroom house for $800. Well, there's no way you can do anything close to that in Portland. So these things are not comparable. And I think what they had some sort of comparable to Beverly Hills when it comes
Yes,
to
they did.
executive compensation. Come on, that is ludicrous.
The
That's ridiculous.
population of Beverly Hills, I know it's a city, I know that. The population of Beverly Hills is almost exactly equal, and it's like, off by 3 or something, to the population of Josephine County.
Mm.
So I said, would you, because they were comparing these places by population. And I said, why the heck would you do that? Are you going to compare the median income in Beverly Hills with the median income in Josephine County? Shouldn't it be based on the median? No, no. Are you going to compare the population in order to say who should get paid what, rather than the median income?
Yeah.
Because if you were going to do it by median income, shouldn't all the government workers, and definitely, absolutely the elected officials, let's just start with them, shouldn't the elected officials be paid no more than the higher rung of the typical worker in Josephine County? They're
Yeah.
supposed to be public servants.
And why would you worry about the population of a particular place that you're comparing to? That has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
I mean, it's now Klamath Falls, they're probably that's not a proper a proper comparison to here. I would imagine that their cost of living might be a little bit less there.
Yes.
Certainly there's somewhere around that you could compare to Grants Pass or to Josephine County as a whole, and get somewhere in the ballpark a little bit better than, I listen. This all comes down to trusting their motives, and whether they are intending to do the right thing or just the thing that they want.
Well, that's why, see, the audience in this thing is always made up of a bunch of elected officials, and they let them talk as long as they want to. Why? What else do you have to say, Mr. Hare? Or what about you? The fellow that's in the clerk's office, the county clerk. What do you have to say? And they go on at length. Nobody's going to interrupt them. One person in the audience, that's me, and I say, does it make any sense? No, you got to be quiet. I'm going to stop you right there, Mr. Matthews. Hey, it's my turn to talk. Is it your turn to talk? Are you even on this thing? That's J.J. Schofield, right? I'm going to make you stop, and you can't say that because that's, this is my time. And I would like to say, now, every once in a while on this thing, you've got somebody, every year there's at least one person who goes, that seems to make sense. But nobody else on the committee will say that, and certainly not the audience, because they don't want to hear that. And the other people are handpicked by the commissioners, and guess who they are? They're exactly the same person as J.J. Schofield, except for the city. Or they might be, somebody from the big hospital, in town. Well, they're going to want comparable salaries. But the big question to ask yourself is, why is it that county commissioners would want retirement benefits? Retire from what? And, well, we couldn't get good county commissioners. How's this been working out for us so far if we didn't offer retirement benefits? What are you talking about? Why are we paying them retirement anything? We're not talking about a career worker that's going to be here for 30 years. If we're lucky, they'll only be here for a 4-year term. Retirement benefits.
Yeah, no, that's silly. That's silly. And listen, even the rule that we have now where it's 5 years or more for, like the commissioners, that's ridiculous too. When I think of retirement from any job, I would think you'd got to put in 10, 15, 20 years there in order to, get real retirement. I think there's a lot of jobs where, you're vested after a certain number of years. And if you happen to quit then ultimately you'll get a small amount when you retire. And I don't know, quite frankly, what the amounts are and stuff. Like if Simon decided he was going to bail after the end of this year, he's going to get some sort of PERS, right?
Well, and also, yes, and also think back on this. When he first ran for office, he said, I'm not going to take PERS. It was a political decision, and I'm just not going to do that. Now that he's into his 5th year, he appealed to the commissioners, and they said yes right away. He would like to be paid, and they agreed to this, that retirement, retroactive to when he first ran. Really? Retroactive to when he first ran. That's my understanding. That's what they said.
Wow.
And so that agreement that he made with the public, well, you can vote for me because I won't even ask for PERS, that was a sham. He's changed his mind. Gee, I wonder was it the 5th year that changed his mind? I think so. And he's a young guy, and he needs retirement because why? Because he's done such a great job, you see.
Because he's the politician and that's what he wants to do.
Brother, this is wrong. So that's why I wouldn't take such a thing. I think it's a scam on the public. You're supposed to be a public servant. You should take what the charter says, even if you don't like it. That's our charter. And if you don't like the charter, then put it up for a vote. Good luck with that. Stick with what the law says. Stick with what you've agreed to do. Just be honest with everybody and stop treating all of the public like you are an imperial presidency and everyone's got to bow to you, and it's perfectly okay in a public meeting to call the citizens names. Where in the world do you find that kind of government? I'm searching around for the button to say goodbye, and the dang thing is hiding on me. I'm.
Well, I
That
can
was the
answer your
perfect spot.
question
Yeah,
here.
well, answer my question, and I found the button. Go ahead.
Yes. Here.
Oh, good answer. Okay, and my answer to you is even shorter. So,
Yes.